For 2 years, I lived in the servants' quarters of the grand Morrison family mansion, hiding a secret that would change everything. It all began the night I met William Morrison at a glittering charity gala. I was working as a server, blending seamlessly into the background, while secretly observing the elite crowd for insights from my real estate investment firm. William, the dashing heir to the Morrison luxury hotel empire, stood out immediately. When he defended me from a rude guest who spilled wine on my uniform, his genuine kindness shone through. What he didn't know was that I was worth more than his family could ever imagine. By the age of 30, I had built Asia's largest luxury hotel acquisition firm, amassing a fortune exceeding $3 billion. But wealth often distorts relationships, and I had learned to guard my success carefully. William saw me as a kind-hearted waitress, and I decided to keep it that way. Our whirlwind romance felt like a fairy tale, until I met his mother, Victoria Morrison. Victoria greeted me with a disdain that chilled the air. She learned I was a server and barely concealed her disgust. "A waitress," she scoffed at our first meeting, her eyes narrowing. "Really, William? What will people think?" William stood by me, but his mother's judgment cast a long shadow. When we married, she made her disapproval crystal clear, skipping most of the ceremony and dismissing me as unworthy. Victoria's disdain didn't stop there. At the wedding reception, she declared with an air of finality, "Since you're so accustomed to serving, you can stay in the servants' quarters. It'll feel just like home." William weakly protested, but his mother controlled the family finances, and the Morrison wealth wasn't what it appeared to be. Their hotel chain was crumbling, a legacy tarnished by debt. Unbeknownst to them, 6 months before I met William, my company had quietly acquired the Morrison mansion through a network of shell corporations. The family had been unknowingly renting their own ancestral home ever since. For 2 years, I lived like a servant in the house I owned, enduring Victoria's demeaning demands. I was forced to use the back entrance, eat in the kitchen, and assist the household staff. "If you're going to live here," she'd say, her tone dripping with superiority, "you need to earn your keep." I watched as they hosted lavish parties they couldn't afford, boasting of their legacy while their empire crumbled beneath them. Victoria, relentless in her arrogance, paraded William before wealthy socialites, hoping to match him with someone worthy. She treated me like a ghost, barely acknowledging my presence as I served champagne in my own home. I bided my time, watching their financial situation worsen, until the bank called about overdue mortgage payments due to my company. Victoria, furious, arranged a meeting with the bank to plead for an extension. She insisted I attend, claiming my pathetic presence would garner sympathy. On the morning of the meeting, Victoria swept into the bank's most prestigious branch, dressed in an impeccable Chanel suit. She tugged me along, hissing, "Stand behind me and look meek. Maybe they'll pity us." The bank manager's office was luxurious, with a view that screamed power. Victoria had chosen this branch to maintain appearances, but what she didn't know was that I owned the building. The secretary announced that Mr. Phillips, the CEO of Royal Crown Banking, would see us. Victoria stiffened in confusion. "We were supposed to meet Mr. Henderson, the branch manager," she said sharply. "There's been a change," I said softly. "Mr. Phillips is better suited for this discussion." Before she could respond, the door opened, and in walked Thomas Phillips, my old friend and business partner. He glanced at me standing humbly behind Victoria, and barely suppressed a smile. "Mrs. Morrison," he began with professional calm, "I understand you're here about the mansion's mortgage." Victoria straightened, her voice laced with indignation. "This must be a mistake. The Morrison family has owned that mansion for generations. These payment demands are absurd." Thomas opened a folder with quiet authority. "Actually, the Morrison family hasn't owned the mansion for nearly 3 years. You've been renting it from Shield Properties, though your payments have been irregular." Victoria laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. "Impossible. We would never rent. We own that house." Thomas's expression didn't waver. "Your family sold it in 2021 to avoid bankruptcy. The paperwork is clear. Since then, you've been tenants, not owners." The color drained from Victoria's face. "No, there must be some mistake. William, tell them." William, silent until now, looked bewildered. "Mother, what is he talking about?" Victoria turned to me, her voice shrill. "You knew about this, didn't you? Why didn't you say anything?" I stepped forward, my voice calm and steady. Because I didn't think it mattered, until now. Shield Properties. That's my company. I've been your landlord this entire time. The room fell silent, the weight of my words sinking in. For years, Victoria had tried to put me in my place, not realizing I had owned hers all along. For 2 years, I lived as a shadow in the Morrison family mansion, hidden in the servants' quarters, bearing their scorn with quiet patience. But what no one knew, not Victoria Morrison, her arrogant glares cutting through me, nor her oblivious son William, was that the mansion they treated as their ancestral jewel was, in truth, mine. It all began the night I met William at a dazzling charity gala. I was working undercover as a server, gathering intel for my real estate firm, when he stepped in to defend me from an entitled guest who spilled wine on my uniform. His sincerity caught my attention, a stark contrast to the shallow elite I had grown used to. What William didn't know was that I wasn't a mere waitress. I was the CEO of Asia's largest luxury hotel acquisition firm, with assets worth over $3 billion. Yet, I didn't tell him. I wanted to see if his heart was as genuine as it seemed, unclouded by the weight of wealth and status. Our romance blossomed into a whirlwind of quiet dinners and stolen moments, far from the pomp of his family's grand facade. When William proposed, I said yes, despite knowing what awaited me with Victoria Morrison, his domineering mother. From the moment we met, her disdain for me was palpable. A waitress, she had scoffed, her lips curling in contempt. Really, William? What will people say? But William stood by me, and we married in a simple ceremony his family barely deigned to attend. Victoria's retaliation came swiftly. Since you're so experienced with serving, she announced at our wedding reception, her voice dripping with malice, you can stay in the servants' quarters. It'll feel like home. William protested weakly, but Victoria controlled the family purse strings, and the Morrison fortune was already fraying at the seams. What none of them realized was that the mansion had been sold years earlier, to me, through a network of shell corporations. For 2 years, I endured life as a servant in my own home. Victoria made me use the back entrance, eat with the staff, and scrub floors alongside the help. She even paraded William in front of wealthy socialites at parties, dismissing me as if I were invisible. I watched silently as they threw lavish events funded by borrowed money, clinging to their illusion of grandeur while their empire crumbled. The turning point came when the bank called about their overdue mortgage payments that were, in reality, due to my company. Victoria, desperate, arranged a meeting with the bank, dragging me along as if my lowly presence would evoke sympathy. She didn't realize I had already set the stage for what was about to unfold. The morning of the meeting, Victoria arrived in an immaculate Chanel suit, her air of superiority undiminished. She tugged me along like a reluctant child, snapping, "Stand behind me and try to look pitiful. Maybe they'll take pity on us." The bank manager's office, a testament to power and prestige, was chosen to maintain appearances. What she didn't know was that I owned the building. When Thomas Phillips, the CEO of Royal Crown Banking and my longtime business partner, entered the room, Victoria's confusion deepened. She demanded answers, insisting the Morrison family had owned their mansion for generations. Thomas, calm and professional, opened a folder. "The Morrison family hasn't owned that mansion for nearly 3 years. You've been renting it from Shield Properties, though your payments have been irregular." Victoria's laughter was brittle, teetering on hysteria. "Impossible. We own that house." I stepped forward, my voice calm. "Actually, Shield Properties is a subsidiary of Chen International Holdings." I reached into my handbag and produced a folder, along with my company ID, placing them on the desk. "And I am the CEO of Chen International Holdings. So technically, you've been living in my house." The silence that followed was deafening. William's coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering against the imported carpet. Victoria's face turned ashen. This is a joke. You're a waitress. A nobody." "Actually," Thomas interjected, "Mrs. Chen is one of the largest real estate developers in Asia. Chen International Holdings owns properties worth over $3 billion, including the Morrison hotel chain's main properties." William whispered, his voice breaking, "The hotel chain? That's our family business." "Not anymore," I said gently. "Your family has been selling off pieces of it for years. My company now owns 60% of the Morrison hotels. We've just allowed you to keep the name." Victoria staggered into a chair, trembling. All this time, in my own house. Your house. I raised an eyebrow. The house where you forced me to use the servants' entrance, where I ate in the kitchen and served drinks at your parties? No, Mrs. Morrison. That house was mine. William turned to his mother, his voice tight with restrained anger. You made my wife, the owner of our house, sleep in the servants' quarters? I didn't know. Victoria wailed. How could I have known? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Should it have mattered? Would you have treated a servant with dignity if you didn't think they were nobody? Thomas cleared his throat. There's still the matter of the overdue payments. Yes, I said, my voice firm. According to your lease agreement, you're 3 months behind. I could evict you immediately. Victoria's face crumpled. You wouldn't. Where would we go? I paused, then opened my laptop. I have a proposal. Chen International is rebranding the Morrison hotel chain as part of our luxury portfolio. We need someone to manage our European properties. The position is in Paris. It means leaving the mansion, living modestly at first, and working hard. But it's a chance to rebuild. Never! Victoria spat. A Morrison working as an employee? Unthinkable! William, his voice firm for the first time, cut her off. Mother, you're in no position to refuse. Not anymore. He turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. Alex, I'm so sorry. I knew how wrong this was, but I was too weak to stop it. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted nothing to do with me. I reached for his hand. Actually, the job offer is for you, not your mother. I married you because I believed in your potential, William, not your family name. Now it's time to prove it. 6 months later, the Morrison mansion was converted into a boutique hotel, its servant quarters transformed into a training center where every new manager learned to serve before they could lead. Victoria moved in with a sister in Connecticut, her social status in ruins. William and I relocated to Paris, where he poured himself into learning the hospitality business. To everyone's surprise, he excelled, doubling the Paris property's revenue in a year. As for me, I still volunteer at charity galas now and then, to remind myself that true character is revealed in how we treat people when we think they have nothing to offer. Yesterday, at a hotel training seminar, I overheard William telling the new staff, treat every guest and employee like they own the place, because one day, you might discover they do. Victoria still emails occasionally, begging for help to restore the family name. I keep her messages in a folder labeled Lessons in Humility.